most difficult parts about being an entrepreneur is you've got to make choices like for the business, whether or not the people around you understand. And bigger than that, like I'm thinking about how can I help the most amount of people. There's just like choices you have to make that not everybody's going to understand. Like for me, I'm so intimately connected with my business and the energy of my business. I talk to it every single day and it will tell me things I need to do. And it's like a mentor for me. And I don't always like what it has to say. And because it asks me to grow up, because I'm like, well, I don't want to do that because I don't want to, you know, hurt these people's feelings or let these people down. And the business is just like tough shit. You're letting millions of people down if you don't do that, you know? So having that relationship with that consciousness, with that energy, certainly like keeps me in check. Okay, so the thing with coffee is that because I am picking up so much information all the time, even when I'm not trying to consciously channel, I'm channeling stuff, like, you know?
Yeah.
And so anyone who's an empath will be like this. There's a reason why people like that will have more body issues. And for many of them, it's digestive because we're processing all of that in our gut. And so for me, I mean, story of my life has been gut issues. And, you know, when I was younger, I didn't recognize the connection between my spiritual gifts and my gut issues. But and I was talking about this a little bit on Instagram the other day. I'm like, there's so much I'm processing and I'm digesting that it tends to be slower in my digestion track. So that's why like easier to digest foods are going to be better for me. Like liquids do better for me, softer foods whenever I can. And even just with what I'm eating, like with fiber, things like that. But the other piece is something that's going to help me digestively is anything that's going to speed up my intestines. And so coffee will speed up your intestines. So anything that like really speeds it up, because energetically what I need is speed. But the problem is my brain, my crown up here is so fast that when I drink coffee also speeds this up. So it speeds it up so much where my foot is already so hard on the gas pedal up here. You add in more coffee and it's speeding this up that I just gas out, like full stop, brain fog, can't think. But because this part is slow, because I'm digesting so much information and food and all that all the time, it helps it because it actually evens it out, right? So with energy and the body, it's always about balance. So where things that are really slow in terms of like energy within different parts of our body, anything that will speed it up will help. And then obviously things that are faster, we want things that are going to slow it down. So that's like the coffee conundrum for me.
The coffee conundrum.
Yeah, the coffee conundrum. So yeah, it makes me feel shitty up here, but it makes me feel great down here. So that's what I was like, is there a way for me to like bypass the brain part of it and just bring it?
Well, that's what I was thinking.
I mean,
I was wondering.
Coffee enemas.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah.
I was thinking about our questions with like the decaf problem and why we feel so like shitty when we drink decaf. I was thinking about that just now in light of what you were saying.
Yeah.
Like, I wonder if maybe we should try again. Maybe we should do some more experiments because I feel like the decaf coffee still does help the digestion.
I don't know the science of all the like parts of coffee that help. So I feel like somebody who like knows, we should ask Brianna because she knows all the different components. I don't know that. So that's where it's like having practical knowledge helps with all the intuitive knowledge so much because then you know how to apply it. So like, is it the caffeine or is it something else in coffee that makes you, because I thought it was the caffeine.
I don't think so. Okay. Because when I used to I don't really drink that much tea anymore, but I would drink like green tea all the time, black tea, and it would never make me. And I also thought that maybe it was like just it's a warm liquid.
Yeah, I mean warm liquids certainly
definitely does. Yeah,
and also bitters, anything bitter, right? So the bitterness of it, but I think caffeine's probably a contributing factor. But you're right, it's not the main thing because you're right. There's like coffee. I was like, because matcha doesn't do the same thing to me.
Right.
So I don't know. I need to invent something.
Yeah. I know you do.
TBD. we'll find out. Okay, anyway, I digress. That's the conundrum I'm in. If anybody knows any substance I can take that will... But that's what's weird, though, is because like magnesium and stuff does not speed anything up digestively for me. Yeah. So, I don't know. I've got to think about this more.
Yeah. We'll figure out a protocol.
Yeah. I mean, I think also... there's a hydration factor to it.
Oh yeah.
Like my body needs so much hydration constantly. Like every part of me, hydration, water. So
did I tell you how my family was making fun of me at Thanksgiving because I would just get those gallons of spring water and I would drink like 1.5 per day? They were like, "Are you okay? Like you have a leak somewhere."
Yeah.
I was like, dude, first of all, I'm also traveling. I'm also around all of you motherfuckers. Yeah. And so
that's great that you did that, because usually when I travel, I am so bad about water. Yeah. Like when we went to Scottsdale last week, I was like, I think I had 1 cup of water in like 3 days. I was just
in the desert.
Yeah. Christina. Yeah. It was bad. Oh my God. Were so dry. Like I'm still recovering. Our hands were so cracked. Here. Yeah. It's bad.
It's so bad. That usually doesn't happen to me. Yeah. I'm such, I need moisture in my air. I'm like living by the water.
I know. We need moisture, but I need like dry moisture.
Yeah.
I mean, it's crazy how much better I felt in the desert. Like me and Tyler had completely different reactions. He got super inflamed. Like his watch wouldn't close.
Oh my God.
And I was the opposite. My rings were falling off my fingers. Like because when I'm in the desert, I just deflame. Yeah. Like I go down 2 pant sizes, literally. And in San Diego, I'm 2 pant sizes bigger. Yeah. Like that's how drastic it is for me. And like all my rings, they don't fit, so it's like crazy how he's so different. Like he needs to be somewhere more humid apparently. And he was also talking about how elevation affects his digestion so much, and like when he was living in Denver, he just always felt shitty because of the elevation, and I'm like the opposite.
Because you're in the ether, so like give me higher.
It's super weird, but it's all about flow. I think that's the one part about energy work that's like frustrating for me, because I'll like know what the problem is, but I don't always know the practical 3D like solution. Like I know what's needed, but that's where I'm like, I have to stay on top of learning just random 3D things because it helps me with application. Like even when I was just saying about coffee, like that certainly helps. Or I feel like my having a background as a nutritionist, like I mean half of that I've literally just removed from my brain, but it helped me apply what I was getting psychically and seeing psychically so much better, and so it's like there are things I'll see on an energy body or I'm getting intuitively, and like my logical brain that knows things about the body, I know, like your liver needs this to create that effect, like to help with the detox, things like that, versus without that other practical knowledge, you can only take your intuition so far, so and a lot of times other people will fill in that gap, like we don't need to know everything, but that's like the frustrating thing. I'm like, I know what's wrong energetically and like I'll move it energetically, but we can't, there's also the like, I'll do my daily energy work, but what else are we doing the rest of the day? It's kind of like exercise is good for you, but like when you're just sitting the rest of the day, I mean, or I was, because we've been all about the spine and feet and all this, and I was reading a post somewhere and someone was saying, my chiropractor said to me, you can do all these exercises while we're here and even for an hour a day, but when you're sleeping all hunched up all night, you're kind of undoing everything you just did during the day. And I was like, damn, that's such a good point. I was like, I gotta fix my sleep position. Like I was like really ruining myself. Yeah. So that's the thing with energy work too, right? It's like it's a constant, it's a thing. Like all the things that we're doing in the 3D, the things we're drinking and eating and how we're interacting and talking, that's all energy. That's all energy movement. So the way that you eat and what you eat like is an energy work practice. So it's kind of like figuring out those things that work for you. That's why people's bodies are so different. Some people, their system moves a lot more slowly naturally, and some people their system moves really fast. It's like in Ayurveda, so you'll see this translate in all different types of like practices, but that's why just different diets work for different people. That's why some people do really well vegan and some people do really well carnivore, and then the opposite for different people. It's like it just depends on your constitution. So
totally. I mean, that reminds me of what you were telling me about like my energy body and the way that I'm like so fast with things and how coffee can actually kind of balance it out. I was like, oh my God, I had never thought of it that way. Yeah. Because I had only ever thought of it of like the science way. But I was thinking about what you were just saying too, because I've been doing all of the guided energy work from Next Level You, and I was noticing like I would feel really good right afterwards.
Yeah.
Because I was doing it very specifically. Like I had to go, I can't remember where I was going, but I was going like to a social thing. And I really like I was like, I don't want to go. Like I'm so tired. But I really wanted to be there for my friend that was performing. And so I can't even remember honestly which one I did, but I did one. And I felt great. And then like the next day I was still not feeling so good. And so I was doing another one and I was like, I think there's some stuff that I need to do actually like subconscious work right now and like journal and like go into channel and like bring stuff to my consciousness, because there's obviously things that I'm not actually doing the work to like shift.
Yeah.
So it's like the energy work helps, but like you said, then what am I doing the rest of the day to clog my system?
Yeah. I think it's like, it's the foundation piece, right? And so it's all about, you have to integrate and you have to apply. And I mean, this, like it's the most frustrating thing for me as an energy healer, and the most frustrating thing for me just within myself about myself. Like I'm also the problem, which is, someone will come in for a session and we've literally gotten every answer they need. It's like, literally do this. And people just don't do it. And it just drives me crazy, right? And I'm like, I've got to figure out a way to help people with this like application piece, because it's like people will know what to do and they just don't do it. And that's a separate issue from us figuring out what needs to get done. And even, stuff with Tyler, like, in his first session with me, I'm like, I told him all this stuff and he never did it. And then like 2 weeks ago, he's like, I have this great idea. I should do blah, blah. And I'm like, you mean literally exactly what I told you in your session? He's like, yeah, I guess. And I'm like, what have you, so you just like, you pay this money, you come in and like, you just don't do it. I'm like, I can't force that. Right. But I also understand it because I do the same shit. Like I would say, I think I'm like good about 90% of the downloads I get, but there's still 10%. I've gotten the same message and my spirit guides would be like, nothing's changed. I've been telling you this every day for the last 3 years. And I'm like, I know, but I just want to, I just can't do it. Yeah. It'd be like stupid shit. It's like, gotta get to bed by 10.
No, literally, it's always the stupid shit. It's always the stupid shit that we don't do. Yeah. And it's like, that would shift everything.
Yeah. But it's like, if you really, like, I think that part is the hardest part. If you just, I'm like, if I just straight up followed literally everything, like 100%, we'd be perfect. We'd be chilling, So, and that's when people get the best results. Obviously, it's like the more you actually take action on your intuition. Oddly enough, it's bigger things that are actually easier for me for whatever reason. But it's more about daily routine things for me that are harder to apply, because I just think that habit's so kind of ingrained. For me, same. Yeah,
I think it's because we are excited and like very connected to our mission and our purpose, and so then when things are revealed to us like, hey, this is the direction you should go, our sacral is like lit up, so we're like, oh yeah. But then when it's a daily routine, we don't get that same high.
Definitely not. Also because it's just like, it's so many things change, I'm like, okay, well, that's going to change my entire social life. That's going to change. Right. Like, it's like all of those things. And then I'm like, oh, we've got to change all of our, like, our team meetings. And we've got to change, I'm like, got to change my workflow. And I'm just like, So it's just a me thing. But that's the human part of it, I guess. So,
Well, anyway, should we dive into some questions?
Yeah.
I wanted to start with this one because we've obviously been talking about it. It has affected all of us. Someone said, if 4 out of 5 of us was sick over Christmas break, are we about to catapult into really good things and upgrades? So do you want to talk about this sickness energy that has been plaguing us?
Yeah, so weird. There's been there are like a lot of reasons why that happened. Part of that was a collective digestion of energies that the collective has been feeling. That's the best way I can describe it. And it's been tense the last couple of months. It's been tense just within the collective, and then also everybody is simultaneously going through these very interesting individual processes, and so we're processing a lot for ourselves and other people all at the same time. So people got hit with a sickness. For some people, it manifested different ways, but most people got hit with something. And so part of it is just collectively like clearing that out and feeling all of that. But a lot of people, another aspect of that was a lot of people came into the year saying, this is my intention. This is what I want to create this year. And so your body says, okay, yes, let's do it. And we have to like literally purge all the old stuff, you know? So for me, when I got my food poisoning, I went into like, it freaked me out because the last time I had felt exactly that way, and I've gotten sick in between this time, but was a decade ago when I got like extremely sick. Like this set off my chronic illness where I ate some froyo. I was throwing up all night, and it turned into like 2 weeks of like constant, you know, excretion. And then my body stopped working. I dropped 50 pounds. My organs started shutting down. It was like, oh my God. And the way that this was playing out, I felt like that in my body. And I was processing a lot of stuff from that time. And, you know, one of the things that I know from that time was that happened right after I had said to the universe, I was like, I want to live my purpose. I want to find my mission. I want to feel like real community. I was just saying, I'm done with this feeling of loneliness. I'm done with this feeling of like, I have so much energy and love to give this world and I don't know where to channel it. I'm done with this feeling of I wake up every day and I just go through the motions and I don't feel a purpose. And right after I had said that to the universe, very clearly, things in my life started just going amazingly for like a month. And I remember saying to my mom, I've never been so happy in my life. Like I didn't know this was possible. Everything's going so well. It felt too good to be true. And it was the day I said that to her that night, I got the food poisoning that then just turned my body off. And so I look at it in hindsight, like you know, 5-10 years later, and it was very clear to me, like, oh, I asked to be redirected on my purpose. Had I not gotten sick, I wouldn't have fallen into that health and wellness rabbit hole. I wouldn't have changed all these boundaries. I wouldn't have shifted my relationships, like that made me who I am. And so I think for a lot of people, it's like a similar thing. So we have to physically clear things out. I also, now I look at that time and it was quite literally a part of me died. Like literally a part of me died. And I think for a lot of people, parts of ourselves had to kind of die recently. And there's obviously I need to take a step back and reflect. Like when you're sick and you literally can't do anything, you're forced to feel your feelings and notice things that have been beneath the surface that you haven't voiced, that you haven't felt. And it all just kind of comes up and you're like, whoa, I didn't realize that was all there.
So much.
And sometimes you don't even consciously know like what was coming up, but like shit was coming up, you know? And so there's that positive effect of like the purging and the recalibrating. And I do know that a lot of people's physical bodies changed through that, you know? So like after that, just noticing if you like literally every day need a different type of nutrition or movement or like I felt a very visceral shift and I knew I was like, oh, I need to like eat differently. I need to move differently. My body needs something. So whenever we're getting that very physical effect, you know, it'll purge things out. It'll clear things out. So I think those different layers were going on. So yeah, I do think good things are happening for sure. But it's not always comfortable getting there. And also sometimes, and this is all happening at the same time. And there were a lot of like dark energies being thrown out and people were processing that. Like when it first started, I went in and there was like an entity trying to attack me and I cleared it. And that's like when I cleared it, like that's when I stopped like vomiting. And I was like, oh shit. And then I was looking at some of my friends who were texting me and I was like, let me just go in there and clear it. And pretty much everybody had like an entity, whether it was in their gut or in their brain. And you know, that is going on right around the inauguration and we've got the LA fire. I mean, there's just weird shit going on. You know, don't get me started. So we also have to realize like, you know, there are like energetic attacks that happen at the same time, and that's why it's so helpful to like have those clearing practices. And at the end of the day, like intention is the most important thing energetically, and you don't have to be a clairvoyant like me to clear things and to command like I'm not you have to go, you know. So that was also happening as well for people. And even if you don't consciously do it, a lot of people do sometimes naturally kind of clear out those entities, but those entities will also bring up things within the surface for you, you know? So that's why I'm saying it was all kind of happening at the same time. And I think, you know, it's like clear yourself. Step 1. Step 2, receive like the upgrades, the clearing, the activation. And then you've got to kind of figure out the aftermath of what needs to change.
I love that. Thank you so much for sharing all of that. I think it's so important for people to have like in the back of our minds, not just for when we're sick. I mean, yes, like to have that for the next time or whatever when you're sick, but also just being able to like hold those multiple truths, right? Of like, yes, there are things that I have not reflected on or that I didn't have access to that need to come up, and there's dark energy. Because when you said that, it helped me so much because I was sick for so long. It was the longest I had ever been sick in my entire life.
Yeah.
And there was a layer of like these deep things that were like, I very clearly received that message. I felt like the energy of 2025 specifically was like, and my Saturn return were like coming to me, and they were like, we're getting this shit out of the way. Because like you have no choice. You have no choice but to let these things go. And there was that dark energy. Yeah. And so when you said that, it like gave me permission to be like, I'm trying to like process all of this as if it's mine, and there's just an element that's just not, because it felt very dark. It felt very like, you know, you're referencing years ago, like how you felt similarly vibrationally. I felt years ago like when I was depressed, like clinically depressed, like that same exact frequency. And I was just like, I know that I'm not depressed. I know that I'm not in that same place in life, but it felt so similar that it freaked me the fuck out. And so then when you said that, I was like, okay, no wonder, you know?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. And that's the thing. It's like, there's that specific vibration you feel. It's like insidious and dark. And I had that too. I was like, I felt the same thing. I was like, I feel like I'm depressed, but I'm not. Like because it's an energy running through you. And that's when you know, like, it's not you. Yeah. It's like not yours. It's something else. And that's when it's like, pluck that shit out. Yeah. Like you're not getting in there, you know? So, yeah, both are going on. There's what's going on individually. There's also just all the stuff that is happening with the collective, and like what gets literally pumped out in mainstream media, on social media, in music, in the water supply, like all of that, you know, in the air, literally in the air, you know. So I mean, as long as people are in denial about that, you can't do anything about it. But once you just accept that, like, that's going on, then you can just like fortify yourself and like have tools to clear with that and deal with that, and to know like, oh, you know, because I think especially in the personal development space, sometimes we take way too much ownership. Yes. And it's important to take, I think, to err on the side of too much ownership, but then you also have to realize like some like other energies are flowing and different people are making choices, and there are going to be things that are coming into your reality that like someone else sent there. And then you respond how you deal with it, but it's not all your stuff. And most people are spinning their wheels trying to undo patterns and feelings and illnesses that are not theirs. And that's why when you just can clear like energies that aren't yours, you immediately feel way better.
Yeah. 100%. Okay, what are some questions you ask yourself when you're reflecting / updating the mission for your business?
Oh, that's a good question. Well, to be honest, I wish I was more original, but I literally just go, I go into channel. The way that I do everything, I'm like, this is exactly what I do. I set up my space. My space is important. I have a particular space I set up. I have a candle I use. I have a pendulum. I bring my journal. I like to lay on a pillow, and I turn on my Ahai, and I call on my guides, and I do whatever needs to get done. And I'm like in that space. Like Ahai is where I channel. It's where I access my Akashic records. And then I will ask my soul, my spirit guides, all of the above, like, what is my mission now? I literally just ask that question, you know? So I'll ask, like, what is my mission now? How can I best serve people? You know, like, what do people really need? How can I help the most people? That's pretty much the only question I'm asking. And then I'm allowing what comes through around that to come through. That's what I'm asking. I think if I'll answer this in another way too. Like if I'm journaling and trying to get to purpose or mission, I would say things that I reflect on are, what do I feel like are my natural gifts? And this has been the one recently, because this is the question that I heard Teal Swan say, and I was like, oh, I love that. Or she said something like you got to zero in on what you're uniquely excellent at. And I like the way that was phrased. And so I've been thinking about it that way. Like, what am I uniquely excellent at? And that's a different flavor to it. So there's like what I like to do, what I want to do, what turns me on, what would I jump out of the bed and be excited for. I was talking to somebody the other day, and I was like, just very casually, I said, oh, I would love for my job to just be networking all day, and I'm just going and getting coffee with people and chatting with people all day. I'd be great at that. And I was like, I would be great at that. Like, that's all I did all day. I was just driving around San Diego, meeting with different people, chatting. Like, I would be great at that, and so it's things like that where I'm like, yeah, I would do that, no problem. You got to zero in on those things, and then that has to overlap with like what are my natural gifts, what am I like uniquely really good at, and zero in on that. Like, for me, there's a lot of things I'm interested in, and that I'm good at, but that doesn't mean that's all of that is going to be the best way I can serve humanity. So I'm collecting that information, and then I'm saying, like, where do I see humanity struggling or suffering where I feel like I have a helpful solution? That's the most important thing, because that could be through anything. That could be through information or technology or art or sharing expression, So I think we all are drawn to particular struggles or problems that we see that we have a heart for, where we're like, I want to help people with this. I'm just intrinsically motivated. And you got to find what that is for you. There are lots of issues I care about, and there are certain issues like I will die on a hill for, just because I have a lot of knowledge and experience. There's other issues I care about a lot, but I don't have that knowledge or experience. So I'm more of like a different type of advocate, or more of a learner, right? Versus there are things where I'm like, I've been in the trenches. Like, I understand this. I've helped lots of people with this. So I think I'm looking for the intersection of that. Things that I get excited about, things that I would want to get out of bed and do every day, how I can serve humanity the most, like who can I really help, who do I want to help, and there's like an intersection there is what I'm looking at with mission, I would say. And the word mission is interesting because it has a very specific energy to it. Because this person asks that, right? Like, how do you, what questions do you ask to get clear on what your mission is?
And they said with their business specifically.
Okay.
Like the mission of the business.
Yeah. I'll also ask the business. I just ask the business like I would a spirit guide. And I'm getting feedback from the universe. Like, what are people asking me for? Sometimes there are people who ask me to do things for them I never thought about doing. I was like, that could be interesting. So I'm getting feedback from the universe. And I ask my friends, and I do this literally all the time. I was just yesterday texting one of my friends. I just do this whenever I want. Like, and everyone's excited to answer me. I'm like, how do you think I can serve people the most? Like, there's lots of things I could do. Like, what would be the best use of my time if I went all in on this? How can I help the most people? Right? So I like to get outside of reflection from people I trust too, because sometimes they can see things that I can't, because a lot of the things that we're really good at, it's so obvious to us that we don't really realize that it's different. So I think it's helpful to get that feedback of like what's helping people the most. And when it comes to mission in a business, that is so much oriented toward like, how are we helping people? What problem are we solving? And so I think a lot of people come into that from a very logical or mental space, and I think that's where a lot of businesses struggle, because they're logically thinking about it versus like on a heart level, what am I going to be intrinsically motivated to help people with? Because you have to be so connected to your why, so I think that's where it's what problem do I really care about a lot? And that's what I connect in with the mission of the business. Mm-hmm. And the mission of the business, that changes. For me, that changes. And when I recheck in on it, there have been certainly times when I'm getting a new mission and different leg of the mission, and I'm realizing all the things I'm going to have to change. And I don't like that. I don't always like that, you know, but it is what it is. Like I'll realize, oh, there's very tangible things I need to close or end, different things I need to start up. And not everybody around me likes that either, but that's where you have to really decide what your priorities are. And I think that's one of the most difficult parts about being an entrepreneur is you've got to make choices like for the business, whether or not the people around you understand. And bigger than that, like I'm thinking about how can I help the most amount of people. So like, yeah, this person might be upset that I can't give them all this one-on-one time, but it is more important for me to pull back so I can create things that can help thousands, millions of people than it is to spend that same amount of energy helping one person, you know? So there's just like choices you have to make that not everybody's going to understand. And even like that the team doesn't always understand, you know, like we need to pull back here and put more energy over here. We need to do less energy over there. Like this has to be this specific for this reason. There's just going to be things that people don't get because like for me, I'm so intimately connected with my business and the energy of my business. I talk to it every single day and it will tell me things I need to do. And it's like a mentor for me. And I don't always like what it has to say. And because it asks me to grow up, because I'm like, well, I don't want to do that because I don't want to, you know, hurt these people's feelings or let these people down. And the business is just like tough shit. You're letting millions of people down if you don't do that, you know? So, I think having that relationship with that consciousness, with that energy, certainly like keeps me in check.
How often would you say that you recheck in with that mission?
With my like asking the question, what is my mission? Honestly, it's intuitive. I'm really only asking that specific question when I'm feeling like things aren't flowing or there's a stuckness. I'm like, let's just recheck in. Am I on track? So that's kind of like, it's not, you know, yeah. But I'm talking to the business pretty much every day,
right?
In some way, like, what do you need? Just doing some energy work on it. What's going on? But like really doing a deep dive on like mission. I mean, certainly I'm doing that at least like once a quarter. But if I'm feeling like things are energetically stuck or not working, then I'll just do it then.
Okay, perfect. I love all of that. Such great insight. This one is about energetic root causes, so I loved it. It seems like in the past month, my vision has changed quite a bit. My right eye especially, has gotten significantly weaker. What could be some energetic root causes of this, and how can I help reverse this? Thank you in advance.
You're becoming psychic. Vision is going to change when our third eye is turning on. And it's also not uncommon for vision to get a lot worse while your third eye is turning on and then for it to return. And sometimes it always changes a little bit because it heightens all of your other senses. I mean, just think about it in terms of what we know about senses, right? When you remove one, the other ones get stronger, right? So blind people have a really strong sense of hearing, like much more than those of us that have our vision. So sometimes and often, I know for myself, when my third eye was turning on, I had really blurry vision. It got worse and worse. And then when it like finally fully turned on, my vision came fully back online. So it's not uncommon for that to happen. And your right eye is going to be about, you know, you're feminine. And so that is the intuitive piece of you. There's also the aspect of what am I not seeing in my inner world specifically. Your left eye would be more of what am I not seeing outside of me, like what is happening in my external world that I'm like turning a blind eye to. But your right eye is going to be more about within myself, like what am I not seeing, what am I not looking at, what am I not acknowledging. Those are like the two main ones.
Yeah, those are great. I'm like, wow, thinking back to times that I've had vision issues in the past, and it's definitely been true for me.
Yeah,
100%.
I mean, it could also be that you got something in your eye.
Yeah.
Like, that happens too.
Yeah, you know? Totally. I loved this question. I was actually talking about what it means to be high frequency to a group of people, but I was channeling, so I don't like fully remember what I said. But the question is, can you talk about the intersection of high frequency versus spiritual maturity?
Oh my God. Yeah, I mean, in some ways, oof. Okay, so in some ways I would say to truly be high frequency in the way I would describe it, or what I would strive for, you have to be spiritually mature. So there's a lot of people that think that their vibration is really high, and it's not because they're not spiritually mature. But there are people who have a high vibration who are not spiritually mature. And this is where they will still struggle with manifestation. Like, you can be projecting out a frequency really strongly and like believe in a frequency really strongly. So that can make you kind of a magnet, I would say. But if you don't have the level of spiritual maturity that you need to fully kind of lock in the highest frequency, fully projected out, you're not going to get clear intuitive messages. Intuitive messages that come in, you're usually going to misinterpret. You're going to feel like there are things in your life that feel stuck or feel frustrating, like it's just not working. It often translates to like more a lack of 3D skills, I would say. And then that causes problems in people's lives. So there's going to be a block in what they can manifest, So, I mean, this is an easy conversation to have. I've had a lot of people I've worked with where, look, I tell people what I think, and if you're paying me, I'm like, I'm going to tell you what I'm seeing. You might not like it, but I've had a lot of conversations with people like, I'm doing all the work. I'm healing all my inner beliefs. And they are. But then I see how they interact with people in the world, and it's immature, or their mindset about things is immature. And so, our subconscious beliefs and our energy and our mindset is so complex. There's so many things, right? We can be really high frequency in certain areas of our lives. Like, we can be enjoying abundance and love, but then you look over here and this person is like super insecurely attached or super anxious or super avoidant, or you look at their communication style with people and how they show up in a room, how they expect everybody else to cater to them, to their feelings. And it's like princess energy, it's like, there are those places of spiritual immaturity, and also how they react and respond to things that come in intuitively, right? So like, you can be a high frequency person in a lot of ways and start attracting things in and then start to spiral, or you can make intuitive downloads mean certain things like about the world around you that they don't really mean, So there's so many different parts of the spiritual maturity, I would say, that it's hard to just say one. But when you have that intersection point is like where you're limitless and where you're unstoppable, but you can also be like really high in the frequency side of things, but be spiritually immature, and it's still not going to fully click. And that's a lot of people's blocks. A lot of people in the spiritual space will do things to raise their vibration. And so they'll generally be really high frequency. They've done all this inner work, they're doing all this energy work, but there's just still things that they're holding on to that are immature, who are spiritually irresponsible. And so that's places often where they'll be acting out of ego, right? Or like needing to feel more important, or just, again, I think just what I consider to be very like 3D skills about how you operate in the world and how you communicate with people and how you show up in a room and how emotionally aware you are of other people. So if you're by yourself a lot, it's easy to feel high frequency. And the second you get around people and you get irritated, you get triggered, like your vibration changes. So the intersection point is where you want to be. I think that spiritual maturity will bring you to being a high frequency, but if you're just on the path of being high vibrational, that won't necessarily bring you down the path of being spiritually mature. And that's why, when I'm teaching spiritual gifts and energy work, I teach it in a really specific way for a reason, because I'm trying to more go down the path of spiritual maturity for people. And people are like, no, I just want the skill, I just want this. And I'm like, but none of that matters if you don't have that level of maturity, because the universe is only going to give you what you can hold. And even with gifts, most people just want to turn the gifts on more. With great power comes great responsibility. And if you're not energetically responsible, you're not gonna get that information. You're not gonna get that power, so to speak. So, and that's true with like, for me, with my psychic abilities, that's true with my energy healing abilities. Just the more you continue to mature, the more stuff comes on. But your soul isn't going to turn it online if you're going to be crazy with it. It's like, I'm not going to give you, I don't know, a machine gun if you don't know how to use it. Like, if you're not responsible, absolutely not. So that's what I would say about that.
Can you talk a little bit more, just like in case people don't know, about like what it means to be maybe high frequency versus like raising your vibration? Like maybe in a quantum way.
I mean, That's the thing when people say things like that. I'm like, what do you mean though?
Right,
like we throw things out there like that, and that can mean like a lot of different things to a lot of different people. So it's kind of like the person asking the question, I would be like, well, what do you mean by that exactly? And then I can respond to that. I guess within myself, like when I'm using those words, I'm talking about technically, like a high vibration, like raising your vibration, raising your frequency is like a very literal, like numbers, like I can measure it, so when I'm doing energy work on people, I'll get a number, like I like of what their frequency is, like how many hertz. Mm-hmm. And so it's just a measurable thing, but I also don't expect everybody to use the definition I have. Right. So I think a lot of people use that as just like feeling good, feeling better, feeling in flow. And yeah, I don't know. I mean, how else do you think people use it?
Well, no, I was thinking more technically, like even just the difference between like frequency and vibration. People have asked me that. Yeah. And
I mean, there's different layers to it, right? There's like your overall frequency, which you can look at as like a soul. You can look at that as the soul embodied in the human is another part of frequency. You can look at like what your frequency is versus like what your temperature is today in this moment, right? Like you're a mood ring. So those are kind of like two different layers going on where you'll have like ebbs and flows within your frequency. Like if I'm a generally high frequency person, I could like go through something where my emotions are really low vibration, but also the way that I react and respond within that low vibrational feeling is going to affect how that affects my overall frequency. And my frequency can lower in a moment. That doesn't mean it can't rebound. Right. So there's kind of like your chronic frequency and then your acute frequency. And with, vibration can also be the frequency, but it's like, where am I vibrating? What am I vibrating with? And so for me, typically when I'm thinking about that, it's much more of like an acute thing and a constantly changing thing. And a frequency is a more set thing within a certain range. But it's also kind of the same thing.
Yeah, I mean, that's how I would describe it too. I was just curious. I think it's also really interesting what you were talking about being able to hold a frequency. That helped me a lot in relating to other people. When you were telling me like certain people can meet me at a frequency and then they can't hold that. I had never thought about it that way before. And I think that that's really helpful for people that, are empaths or are very high frequency. It's like, yes, like people can meet you and be in alignment with you, and that doesn't mean that they're going to stay that way, especially long term.
We also have to get a little more discerning about what about each other is in alignment. Like, why am I in alignment with this person? And a lot of people will meet people and they're like, we're so resonant, blah blah blah, and I'm like, okay, well, the piece of you that's resonant, is it a healthy piece? Is it an evolved piece, or is it like
a wound?
And that's what happens to a lot of people. It's like, how did I end up with a narcissist? How did I end up with an avoidant attachment? I'm like, because where you were resonating was like your anxious attachment was resonating with their avoidant attachment. So we have to get a little bit more discerning. And when you first meet someone, it will seem like it's all the good parts, but it's not always. I mean, sometimes it is, so we can be resonating with people on different levels like that too.
Beautiful. Well, thank you for all of your wisdom.
Thanks for the questions. These are fun. If people have more questions, we'll put the link below in the show notes so you can send in more questions and let us know if you guys like the Q's and A's, because we like these.
We love these.
All right, cool. Well, thank you.
Thank you.